What's going on? Boys, more order development. Perhaps a little more concise this time. I have notes again. To begin, I was expecting a degree of seething from the INTP video, but I wasn't expecting that degree of seething. Though maybe I should have. There's a reason I never talk about INTPs, but that degree of seething helped sequence a few external ideas. First written point. If you're thinking about something as a puzzle itself, instead of as a solved puzzle piece of the greater puzzle, then you haven't accepted it. I'm closing in on accepting most people are actually false, unreasonable, and evil. Now, what this point means is it used to bother me a lot what people are, and not even in a typology sense. I mean, generally. What I used to be deeply concerned with was how do we get people to be more reasonable or less evil, or how do we expose most people as unreasonable and evil? False. But while I'm not there yet, I am closing in on accepting that this is a component, not something to be solved. The goal is accepting what people are for what they are, rather than trying to figure out how to change it. You aren't going to change it. The goal is to accept that this reality is a puzzle piece, not the puzzle. If you sit on one problem that can't be solved, it can't even really be resisted, you're going to stagnate and drive yourself crazy. Once you accept what things are as they are, you can start working on real issues. Or put another way, things you can work on. Probably gnosis or some other form of enlightenment. Not that you are ever going to achieve it, but the point is in the effort. Point number 2. There is manipulation, but there is no fabrication. We're here to show people reality, not convince them of falsehood. Now, this point has a few points within it. The first is accepting manipulation. If you are in any way trying to move people outside a point of view or a path they have already chosen, then even if it is for the best, not just you think it's for the best, let's say hypothetically it is objectively the best, then you are still manipulating them. You need to learn to accept these negative words, like selfishness. I was thinking about selfishness recently. A common way of viewing selfishness or viewing decisions, people, etc., is saying everything is selfish. And I believe that's the case, but what does that mean? Any choice you make, any choice that is your choice. Even if you choose, let's say, to sacrifice yourself to save other people, that would still be considered a selfish choice in certain points of view. In my point of view. Why is that? Because it's something you want to do. It's a choice you are making. Real selflessness would be exactly what the word states. Giving up or giving away yourself. Forfeiting your right to choose. Ultimately, forfeiting your right to choose. Becoming a puppet. That's selflessness. But again, you can change words around without changing the substance of things. Many people would consider a sacrifice not selfish, but it's all semantics. The example here, the exercise, is accepting the nastier word. If you can accept the nastier word, the nastier semantics that are going to be lobbed at you without faltering, then you are a little less vulnerable. Words are words, actions are actions. Words are great, words are important, but I think actions. Wow, we almost just walked headfirst into a cliche. I am not saying that shit, but you know what I was going to say. That's right. Actions are a product of words, the same way material is a product of consciousness. You silly goose. Okay, so we have that part of point 2 down. Next part. There is no fabrication. We're here to show people reality, not convince them of falsehood. So, what are we manipulating people toward? Well, we aren't trying to manipulate people into believing falsehood. More, we are not trying to convince people to believe reality. We are steering people into overlooks from which they can view reality and then decide whether or not they want to look deeper into reality or go right back to the falsehood path. Most people are going to be furious they've been shown reality. Some people aren't going to be furious, but they aren't going to look any deeper into reality. They're going to go right back to doing whatever they were doing before. But a small minority is going to see reality and get a taste for it, want more, get curious. And that curiosity in no way needs to lead to their joining us. Just the fact someone is aware of not all of reality, but that there is a reality and they would like to figure out more is enough. That's why you don't see me arguing with people very often. At least arguing in the trying to persuade them sense. I'm beginning to like arguing for shit-flinging's sake, but it's not my responsibility, and it's not your responsibility to try to persuade people who don't want to be persuaded. All you do is make resources available for people who might want them. If you have to force someone, then it isn't real. A born psychic is going to figure this shit out on their own eventually, with or without you. Your job is to make that path a little more available earlier if that's something they want. And that's another aspect of Gnosticism I'm enjoying. Again, we aren't Gnostics, but we are drawing heavily from their book because it's a good book. And I especially like that it is technically an offshoot of Christianity. Gnosticism would be as great as it is if it were its own thing, no connection to Christianity, but the fact that it is, I find endlessly interesting. Anyway, the idea of old soul psychics and young soul psychics. The difference between them being older soul psychics have been through the reincarnation process multiple times, getting ever closer to gnosis, perhaps becoming pneumatics. Young soul psychics are divine sparks that are just now beginning to realize that they are divine sparks. If there is a spiritual journey, and it does matter, then part of your trying to achieve pneumaticism is making available resources for other psychics, helping them realize their divinity earlier so they have to spend less time in the shit prison. And once again, you do that by making available reality or resources to see segments of reality. You don't force it on people, you don't force them to partake. You just make available. If someone has it in them and wants to be persuaded, they will take what they see and persuade themselves. Such is the divinity of that spark. We are an order pushing awakening. We are not a cult pushing delusion or illusion. So the third point isn't written as a sentence. It is a series of smaller points, and we will go through them. The first point is, lessons are learned in pain and hurt. You aren't really aware of how reality works, how people work, until people and reality are inflicted, or they inflict themselves upon you. Once again, logical type awareness of a truth and felt experience of a truth. The latter is a lot more potent. So in this way, in this manipulative sense, I think it is useful to feed people to each other. In other words, orchestrating situations in which a shitty, unreasonable majority mob is going to make a more reasonable, perhaps, minority feel a lot of negative emotions. Nothing makes people pick up a spear and a book faster than realizing the people you have been socialized to see the best in and support will eat you alive the moment they think they are able to. Even better, even more unjust, even more fire-stoking, inferno-stoking occurs when that mob tries to justify their own evil morally. And how do they do that? They do that with populism. They do it with the right of the mob. This is what most people believe is right. Eating you alive is what most people believe is right. So you're wrong and the mob is right. Now, of course, that isn't the way things actually work. If there is a cosmic right and wrong sense, and I think there might be, but it is the way mobs work, and nothing makes people angrier and more stalwart for themselves and against mobs than experiencing mobs firsthand. And a little bit of this, thankfully, went on during the INTP video in the comments section. There were 5 instances of people shitting on typology, and one of them, another little point, if you can get the more you can get people to talk, the more rope they'll give you to hang them. So 4 of them didn't really give much other than fuck typology. The 5th one gave plenty of vulnerabilities someone interested in defending typology could prove wrong, and prove wrong in a pretty embarrassing way. Like, you wouldn't have needed to get into theory or functions or community or any of that. There were instances you could prove someone's argument wrong factually, just because they decided they wanted to talk more than they should have. And, of course, scalding, seething about how I don't understand typology, the implication being all these other people understand typology better than I do. Well, all you who know better, why did only one person try to defend the system you are saying that I don't understand? One person tried to defend typology. Now, here's what I wrote regarding my thoughts on that. Intervening would have been easy, but I want you to feel hurt and frustrated. You won't learn and adapt otherwise. Few things are as frustrating as getting ganged up on by a group of people you know to be wrong, but don't understand or aren't ready to prove wrong. In that instance, I or anyone else could have jumped in and said something, because in that one, the vulnerable typology disliker was around. But the act of intervening in that situation, and more importantly, other situations like it, is pointless. You gain, like, nothing is gained. Opposition is not going to be persuaded by anything. Hylics are soulless. And that's one of the other things I was thinking about, right? Hylics. Why I like Hylic as a term better than I like NPC. NPC doesn't work as an insult because it's wrong. Calling someone an NPC implies they can't do other than what they're told and they can't think at all. That's not what human beings are. That's why it doesn't work. Another implication, or another way to look at it is, NPCs are made to be beaten by player characters, and if you're calling people NPCs, then you are implying you're a player character. Hylic is a lot different and a lot more applicable. Hylics are soulless. They can act and they can think. And in fact, they almost certainly can act and think better than you can. And even if you defeat, quotes, one of them, there are trillions more waiting to take that one's place. I reiterate, however, they are soulless, meaning even if they can think and do better than you can on scales you can't even imagine because there are so many more of them, nothing they do is in the pursuit of gnosis or enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. Getting beyond this reality, trying to contend with the uncontendable. All their thinking and acting is in the service of maintaining the consciousness status quo, preventing not just themselves from ascending because they don't have the capacity to ascend, but to stop psychics and pneumatics from ascending. And again, in contrast to NPCs, Hylics are not made to be beaten. You can beat Hylics, but again, they're a Hydra. You beat, quotes, 1, 10 more pop up, and when you beat them, you gain nothing really, because they aren't your goal. Your goal is to get out of hell reality, or achieve gnosis, enlightenment, whatever. They're going to do everything in their power to chain you or remove you from existence, but you gain no XP from killing them. Once again, that's why I tend not to try to persuade people of anything. It's pointless. Meaning, if one were to intervene and try to help this person who's fighting off 3 people solo, the Hylics are not going to be convinced, even if you do prove them wrong. And the person you are intervening on behalf of is going either to turn on you, because again, you try to help people, for some reason most people are going to turn on you, or they are going to escape, probably leave you there to deal with it, and in any case, not learn the lesson. If you want some people to learn, then you need to feed the few to the many. And once again, I don't vouch for anything I don't go through or put myself through personally. On a more serious level, the justice system was inflicted on me. More recently, well actually last year, not somewhat recent, the realities of people who hate you and want your life destroyed was inflicted on me and affected my career severely. I make less than half what I was making before. I'm making 2/5 what I was making before. I love what I do, but it's frustrating and it's humiliating. And the ambushing, it affects you in a bad feeling way, but in a good, empowering way. And then on a strictly dealing with bad energy level, I've been doing this on my channel for a while now, provoking an unreasonable majority into hammering a nail they can feel justified in hammering, or justify themselves to themselves in hammering. Now, this is a later point, we're going to come back to this, but that is a good way to get truth out of people, get evidence immediately. But on this point's level, becoming comfortable with lots of people not liking you. And on the emotional level, you can actually see a difference. You can go back to my Types of INFJs video, which was my first experiment with provocation, and see that I am deeply uncomfortable with it. But then you look at the more recent INTP provocation, and it still bothers me, but nowhere near as much. The energy went from, oh god, they aren't going to like this, terror, to, I know they aren't going to like this, let's see how I deal with it. And the community response was worse than I was expecting, and my reaction was better than I was expecting. Once again, I'm not puzzle piece versus puzzle. The degree to which people are unreasonable still bothers me, but I'm getting to the point I am accepting it as a given. Give this, I'd say, 2 more years, maybe, and hopefully that will be resolved internally. Saint O'Neill managed to do it. In fact, he viewed it as something essential. The ability to take that pressure, as he would say. That can be achieved with work. And you can achieve it, and some other psychics can probably achieve it too. But to achieve it, either to develop that strength in a psychic or to start someone on their path, to get that fire under their ass or that tar in their stomach, you need to feed the few to the many. You can tell someone that people are bad, but they aren't going to understand it until they have dealt with it. And before we move on to point 4, I made a note about the instances I will engage unreasonable people. My looking bad or beaten to an unreasonable majority makes me look better / sound more convincing to a reasonable minority. It makes the truth sting harder later, too. Now, it's arrogant to tell you how other people perceive me. However, let's say I'm completely wrong about others' perceptions. If you haven't noticed, I personally want to be perceived poorly by most internet people. And I want to be perceived this way because I'm confident in the shit I'm saying. Because these are not, once again, these are not fabrications. These aren't persuasive arguments. Much of what I say, most of what I say, especially on typology videos or in typology videos, is observation. Some interpretation, granted, but interpretation I am willing to stick my neck out for. I've seen what I'm talking about enough times it is. I am trying to set off in that reasonable minority, probably the ones who aren't familiar with the channel, the feeling, why is everyone disagreeing with this? And particularly in one of a few patterned responses. What's being said in the video is correct. So what's going on here? Why is the majority aggressively disagreeing with something that seems to be correct? That's the feeling I'm trying to create. Because all people, Hylics, psychics, pneumatics, everyone is a contrarian. Now, they might not be contrary to the popular opinion, but they are very contrary to something. The unreasonable, aggressive majority here is contrary to what we're saying. The idea is to get other people contrary to what the majority is saying, so they can pick a fight and then lose, in the popular eye anyway, so they can become frustrated enough to break away from crowdthink. I'm reading a book on crowd behavior right now, and it's interesting. It's talking about how crowds change individuals' makeups as long as they are part of that crowd. So the idea here is to get people gnawed on by a crowd enough they decide they no longer want to be in a crowd. Or at least not that crowd. And on that note, point 4. Provoke an unreasonable majority into making your point for you, the point being crowd shit. So those reasonable few have both an argument and a set of evidence in front of them. That's one of the other values of provocation via truth. If you think you are ever going to win a majority using truth, you are the dumbest fool. However, if you can instead provoke that majority into proving either what you're saying or what they are, then a reasonable minority will have an entire evidenced thesis behind them. You aren't just telling them something, you are telling them something, and other people are substantiating your claim right there. The point is as in front of a person who may or may not be reasonable as you can make it. And that reasonable minority probably isn't going to change the world, but you are creating more opportunities, ideal opportunities, as ideal as you can get, to see and then maybe for themselves choose reality. Okay, point 5. Anger brings reality out of people. Without anger, I wouldn't have realized there's more to me. An ugly but real more I was unaware of. Don't run from negative feelings. Use them to explore yourself and others and then become stronger. Wolves will come knocking on your door for real one day. Be ready. At some point in your life, you might have the misfortune of facing reality head on. A super fucked up situation in which nobody helps you. All you're going to have to rely on is yourself and the skills or thick, leathery skin you've built up. And in that vein, negative feelings, but especially anger, show you what you are. The angrier a person is, the more primal they get, the more their socialization goes out the window, and they demonstrate to you, maybe you demonstrate to yourself, who and what they are. Don't run from negative feelings. They are opportunities to learn and to develop skills. And I just thought of something while I was taking a short break to take a piss. To persuade Hylics, you need to deceive. To persuade psychics, you need to show. Back to standard programming. Number 6 is getting away from mechanics type stuff and more into some thoughts. Are we incarnated as ants so we can learn how ants view the cosmos? We must be here to learn or to explore, not to explore geography, but to explore consciousness. We've been planted in an ant farm. Once again, Terence McKenna, why have just one answer? This is something I was thinking about in regards to what might be going on. Humans already experiment with different levels of consciousness daily. Don't you think if we had the means, the technology, we would try to see what animals or insects cognate? Not even for any greater reason, but just to see. I mean, right now, couldn't you imagine someone saying, yeah, if I had the opportunity to live a day as an ant, I would, just to see how they think? Are we the lower incarnations of psychonauts? Something I was thinking about. And sort of in that vein, perhaps in the first... Shit, which one is the puzzle one? Hold up a sec. Yeah, it's the first one. So, sort of in the previous point's vein, and sort of in the first one's vein, I'm working to give up on humanity in earnest. Not necessarily out of malice, and certainly not out of a desire not to care, but rather because I think if one can give up on humanity as a whole, then there becomes a vacuum or resources mentally and physically, literally, one can put toward other psychics. And I think we're already in the process of doing that. It's just a matter of something, either enough small experiences or another raving, shitty trauma to really seal the deal and free up those resources in earnest. But that about covers it. And this one was denser than I was expecting it to be. And no summary this time because I don't know how I would summarize this one. But that about rippity wraps this one up. I hope you enjoyed watching, so I certainly enjoyed making it. I do want to take another shot at that Blood Meridian thing. I just can't not take it seriously next time. But I will say that, again, that's the hardest I've laughed in 3 years, probably. Goodness gracious. And it was something that silly. But someone said I don't laugh enough, and I haven't made a jokey video in a while. Whatever. Like if you enjoyed, because it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes. And comment your thoughts, love hearing from you. What do you think about reality? Or the presentation of reality? Especially in contrast to a Hylic majority. I'm curious. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Really, really a lot of fun on this channel. So much fun. In fact, you can form it out of mud and give it no soul. Which isn't going to be fun for the people who have to deal with the thing. But for you, it would probably be pretty funny to inflict that on other people. That's all I have on this channel, and I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.